doses. Self-help from the hip. Small doses. We're talking that shit. Small doses. And keeping it real. Small doses. With me and them seals. It's so funky. Where do bloggers lie in journalism? Because I can't take it.
I mean, blogging is blogging. It's not journalism.
But they call it the news. Like
it's
when I see
information.
Is it if it's not informed?
I don't know if it's news.
I mean, when I see sites like the Shade Room and Baller Alert and Jasmine Brand, like these are blogs. When I see them refer to their posts as news, I get concerned because I feel like we're conflating.
Yes.
And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that. Like, am I oversensitive to this because I'm sometimes the subject of their news?
Well, look, I mean, I think what's important, I think it is, it's encouraging that there are people who want to be more informed and who are seeking out sources of information, right? But it is also, that landscape definitely has some bad actors in the mix, right? And some of them are operating in the blogosphere, to be sure. Some of them are operating in journalism, but
right.
But some of them are operating in the blogosphere. And so, like, I think too, though, that we have to acknowledge. I mean, I have to acknowledge, certainly, as somebody who has spent most of their career in mainstream legacy media, and has created, helped to create a new newsroom that is kind of, is definitely trying to shift the paradigm, but also kind of a lot of us come from that tradition as well. Like, we have to acknowledge that not everybody in this country is getting their news and information from those traditional legacy mainstream sources, right? But what you would hope is that people are still getting their news from trusted sources, okay, right? Who are trusted because they actually have credibility and integrity, right? And are operating on the tenets of journalism, and not something that is less credible or less interested in accuracy than clicks and headlines.
Well, before I even get to clickbait, can we speak to like what are the tenets of journalism? I think honestly, like, I grew up in an era where my mom was still reading the newspaper in front of me. Like, it was still valuable to research before you speak. That, like, and for what it's worth, like, I went to school, and since middle school, it was like, you can't say that unless you have a source. And if you have a new idea, you still have to be able to reference, like, basically it's like math, you still have to be able to show your work, and I know that I remember seeing All the President's Men and seeing, I'm just like, every news media source needs to sit down and watch the paper again. Have you ever seen the movie The Paper?
Of course, yeah.
Of course. Ron Howard. I love The Paper because, one, it's a good ass movie.
It is a good movie.
On a basic note, it's just like, we just can't print shit without being thoughtful about it. Like, this is people's lives. And look at this dog. Look.
I am looking at him, actually. I'm not even listening to you anymore. I don't even care about journalism right now. I'm all about Jordy.
Jordy?
He's being real dramatic.
I mean, look at his owner.
You're right. He's already picked up your traits.
Hey, boo-boo.
He's already picked up your traits.
Listen, it's a whole performance. But I think that, like, I don't know what the actual tenets of journalism
Mhm.
are. I just was always taught, don't speak on shit you don't know. And then I saw it reflected in movies about journalists where like you had to show your notes. That was always a
Yeah.
thing. Like you have to be able to show your notes and who you spoke to. And you may not have to reveal your sources, but you have to at least prove that like you didn't come up with this shit while you were walking Jordy. Like you came with this shit while you were walking Jordy and spoke to a person who is a reputable source, etc. So what are the actual tenets?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like we are seeking truth, and we are seeking to tell the truth and to be as accurate as possible in in doing that. And so there is a process for that, right? Like the reporting is very important. When we say something, like how do we know that, right? Where does that come from? There's a lot of research involved. There's a lot of reporting, and talking to people involved, but also, the idea of afflicting the comfortable, not necessarily of objectivity.
Afflicting the comfortable. That's the name
Yes.
of my next special.
And comforting the
Afflicting the
afflicted.
comfortable.
And comforting the afflicted. But not, and not necessarily objectivity, which we talked about earlier, but that awareness of our biases, and also potential conflicts. Like, if there's a reason we shouldn't be telling the story, or like that a reporter in particular shouldn't be telling a certain story. And then, speaking truth to power, like a lot of what we do and a lot of what we write and report is because we want to change something. We want to right a wrong, right? We are confronting injustice. And so I think, frankly, this is one of the main reasons that race reporting is so vital, because it does have the capacity to bring about the kinds of changes that we say that we want as a society, and to help. And it is a way in which journalists, as citizens, can participate in our democracy and like help to perfect our union.
I never thought of it that way. I just, what would inspire this next generation to pursue like journalism versus blogging? Because I say that in the context that it seems to me like clickbait has become the drive for what to read and not truth. Like I feel like truth used to feel like the drive. Like I want to find out about this.
Well, here's what I would say to that. Like, if you're in this for clout, like that's not why you go into journalism, right? Like that's not what journalism is for. That's certainly not what made me go into journalism. If you are a young person who is curious about the world that you live in and why certain things are the way that they are, right? If you are somebody who sees your community and the stories in that community, and you feel like they need to be told and that nobody else is telling them, right? If you are somebody who wants to bear witness for people like your mom and your grandma and your aunt and your dad, your grandfather, then you are somebody who maybe wants to tell the truth about this country. And then maybe you are somebody who would be a good journalist. But that is a process. You don't just wake up one day and hop on the laptop, right? And just start banging stuff out because you can, because so much of publishing is democratized. But publishing and journalism are not the same thing, right? And this is something that you have to learn. It's tricky for people because like this isn't a thing that we get a certificate for, right? Like you can earn a degree in journalism, but like we're not like certified in journalism. But it is a craft. It is a skill. And it is something that people have to learn because there are criteria for doing this job. And so that is what distinguishes us from people who, are just pulling things out of thin air and hopping on the laptop and hitting publish.
Do you feel like the clickbait era has had an effect on journalism? And if so, what do you think that has been?
I think the 24/7 news cycle and social media have had a profound effect on
Mm,
journalism because, the notion of feeding the beast, which has always been around in
right.
journalism, it's just the metabolism of that beast. Is really, I mean, it is accelerated to say the least. So, um, yeah, I mean, and look, I certainly, um, am as guilty of this as any reader or viewer, right? Like I'm on Twitter, like, okay, what's new? What's next? Like what's the latest on this, right? Like
Right.
I'm checking my phone as much as anybody else. And so like, um, so I think that a lot of that mentality is fueling the clickbait era for sure. Because you want to, I mean, people are wanting to have something that nobody else has, right? Like people are wanting to have something that's going to bring them to their site and for them to become known as like a destination for that kind of information, right? Because what do most people back when we used to go to the office,
I'm at
people
the office right now. Look, I got dressed. I put on lipstick. I got
you
on
did. I appreciate that.
the buttons on my shirt, match the buttons on
Love
my
it.
pants. I mean,
Love it.
this is my new
Love
thing now, getting dressed every day to go to work in my living room.
But yeah, people like to tell people things that they don't know, and you shouldn't do that about things that are not necessarily true. But if it's new and something somebody hasn't heard, I guarantee you, like it's probably going to be out there.
So I always say media is king. I feel like folks really underestimate the power of the media in how we move the needle. Like you've mentioned so many different ways over the course of this conversation about just the way, just one, like how journalism and media, when it is really seeking to tell the truth about spaces that are not being addressed, really actually is democratizing for the people. Like not just like as a field, like it allows the people to be a part of their own democracy by simply just informing them of like, these are things that are going on. Because I know this is a hard ass country to understand. Like just our government, the way things work, like it's a whole job, to just fathom the way things are getting done, Like when Angela be trying to explain stuff, I'm like, I can't. I got to raise a dog now. I don't.
You do. Your dog mom. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and I don't want to become a mom with a dog in a stroller. I don't. So I really got to focus on making sure that I'm raising a responsible dog child,
Independent.
and I don't have the time to do that and learn all the nuances and the little microcosms that are going on in the Beltway. Like it's just, It really is, for some people, it's fascinating. Like when I go on Love It or Leave It, I'm always like, I don't know why they keep asking me to come on this show. I don't know nobody's name. Like they're like Mueller and so-and-so. I'm like, I know Mitch McConnell because he looks like an evil turtle. So it's easy for me to remember that. I know Rand Paul because he's just an idiot. A lot of names I don't know. I know faces. And I'm like, you're a jackass, you're evil, you're racist, etc. And I feel like I speak for a lot of folks, but like the work that you all are doing.
That's true. Like that's why it's so important, frankly, for us as political journalists to talk to voters. I mean, obviously you're not our average voter, but I mean, you are somebody who
in many ways I am
like many voters, you're not paying attention to the data. I mean, like we are so obsessed with this, right? Like, I mean, seriously, I remember like, you think back a year ago when there were, a million people running for president, right? Every time somebody jumped in, I would call one of my friends or I would call my mom and say, Mom, who's Pete Buttigieg? Mom, who is Andrew Tom Steyer? Who's Andrew Yang? Yeah. No idea. And my mom,
I can't even believe I pulled his name out just now.
And these are people who are super voters, right? Like they vote every single election, no matter who's running. Like, so it's not that they're not informed voters. It's just that we were a year out. That didn't matter to them right now in the way that it matters to us, right? Like as political journalists, like we are obsessed with this, and frankly, we get paid to be obsessed about it, while everybody else is living their lives, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I think that really does speak to the need. And also because Twitter is not America, right?
Right.
So the folks that are on Twitter are also very invested in our politics a lot of times, a lot more invested than regular folks who are just out here working and living, right? So talking to voters will give you a very different experience about what is happening on the ground and their realities than what most of us have who get to put on makeup and nice clothes and talk about politics for 3 minutes at a time on television.
Well, you do look pretty.
Thank you.
Yes, give us the white and the bob and the glasses and the lip gloss. It's a whole moment. What is Black media's responsibility? Because I know some people like to say, like, there is no difference. We're the media. Like, there's no like Black media. We're just media. But I have always, because people like to say that about artists, right? Like, I'm not a Black artist. I'm just an artist. Whereas I personally, I feel empowered and I personally like plant my feet in like, no, I'm not just an artist. I'm a Black artist. And that means a lot to me.